I can still hear my mother laughing. That sharp, cruel sound that split through the air the night they dragged me into the living room. My son stood in the doorway, frozen, his small fists clenched. My father's hand was wrapped around my collar, yanking me forward. "Let him watch," my mother sneered. "He needs to see what happens to trash." The first hit blurred my vision. The second made my knees buckle. Blood filled my mouth, warm and metallic. "Character building," my father spat, gripping my hair to keep me upright. "He should see you bleed." I didn't cry, not in front of them, not in front of my son. I locked my eyes on him instead, and promised him, without words, that one day this moment would be theirs to regret. Back then, I thought blood meant family. I was wrong. There was a time I trusted them, even loved them. I used to believe their approval was worth chasing. Their cold nods, their rare smiles. When I had my son, I thought maybe they'd change. They didn't. My father saw weakness in kindness. My mother saw opportunity in pain. They hid their cruelty behind discipline, tradition, teaching lessons. I tolerated it for years. For my son, I swallowed my anger. Until that night. The next morning, I could barely move. My ribs screamed with every breath. My son climbed onto the bed and whispered, "It's okay, Mommy. I'll be strong for us." That was the moment something in me shifted. I stopped being their child. I started being their executioner. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I planned. The first step was distance. I smiled through my cracked lip, played the obedient daughter, and let them believe they'd broken me. They didn't notice the way I started collecting things. Documents, receipts, whispered statements from neighbors who'd heard the fights. I photographed the bruises, dated every image. The second step was the law. Quietly, I found a lawyer who specialized in domestic abuse and property disputes. I learned exactly what would happen if certain evidence came to light. The third step was patience, the kind that tastes like blood because you're biting down on your rage every single day. They slipped. My father bragged to a neighbor about how he kept me in line. My mother left threatening voicemails when I didn't answer fast enough. Little pieces of their arrogance handed to me like weapons. I gathered everything. Years of abuse, financial theft, property deeds they'd forged, accounts they thought I didn't know about. When I filed, it wasn't just for assault, it was for everything. Fraud, theft, intentional emotional harm, child endangerment. And I didn't just file, I made sure every person they respected knew. Their church, their friends, their business partners. They were served papers in public. My mother's face froze mid-laugh. My father's hands twitched, wanting to hit, but knowing the cameras were on him. The court dates were slow. I made them slower. Every delay was intentional. Every new piece of evidence dragged their humiliation out further. I spoke calmly in court, never raising my voice, letting the evidence bruise them in ways I couldn't with my fists. By the second month, they were selling off assets to pay legal fees. By the third, they were begging my lawyer for settlement terms. I rejected every offer. The climax wasn't in a courtroom. It was in a cheap motel room. The sheriff had already taken their house. Their accounts were frozen. My mother's friends avoided her calls. My father's business had collapsed under the weight of scandal. I had requested, no, demanded one final meeting. Not for negotiation, for closure. They sat on the bed, clothes wrinkled, faces sunken. My father's hands shook. My mother's eyes were red, but still searching for some scrap of power. "You've made your point," my father rasped. "Enough." I set a manila envelope on the table. Inside, the only thing left they cared about, A deed to a small plot of land they'd kept hidden from the court. I'd found it weeks earlier. My mother's fingers twitched toward it. I slid it back. "You'll sign it over to my son," I said, "today. In exchange, I'll stop digging. Because trust me, there's more to find." They hesitated. I leaned forward. "You made me bleed in front of my child. You told him I was trash. Now you'll watch me build his future with what you thought was yours. And you'll live long enough to see him thrive while you rot in nothing." My mother looked away first. My father reached for the pen. They signed. I walked out without looking back. I didn't feel joy, not the kind they'd understand. It was cleaner than that. Justice isn't about screaming victory. It's about the quiet power of knowing they can never touch you again, and that every breath they take is a reminder of the life they destroyed but couldn't own. That night, I tucked my son into bed. He smiled the way he had.